Welcome to First Time for Everything, a podcast for curious people. I'm your host, Danny Elliott. I've toured the world as a backing vocalist for some of the biggest names in music, owned a prop rental business, ran a vintage boutique out of a camper I renovated, and I've had a lot of firsts in my life. I created this podcast in hopes of inspiring you to take a chance on something you've been wanting to try for the first time. We're going to discover a lot of really cool stuff together, and I'm so happy you're here. First timers, what's up? We've got a hitter on today's episode. I'm talking with musician, producer, and songwriter Sam Barsh. Sam's work has won 4 Grammys and been nominated about a dozen more times. He's written and produced songs for Anderson Paak, Kendrick Lamar, Kanye, and jazz greats like Gregory Porter, Snarky Puppy, and one of my personal favorites, Jane Moneheit-i. I mean, we're barely touching his resume at this point. Sam is one of a kind. I first saw him play way back in New York, and I was like, who is this beast? He is one of the most talented keyboardists I've ever had the pleasure of listening to, and I'm going to recommend right now that you go check out his music. In today's episode, Sam and I talk about his journey to winning a Grammy as a kid growing up outside of Chicago to becoming an in-demand LA producer, how to be flexible with your goals, and working through imposter syndrome. This is First Time Winning a Grammy with Sam Barsh. All right, today we have Sam Barsh on the podcast, and I'm so happy you're here. It's so good to see you. It's been a hot second, I think like right before COVID hit last time, with too long.
Yes, it was not long before COVID. And I remember we went to the opening of the Webster, which is a cool store in West Hollywood. So not that I probably would buy anything there because it is quite overpriced, but I did bring my godson there last year. He was looking for some Gucci slides.
There you go.
Yes, he ended up purchasing them direct from the actual Gucci store upstairs from there. But we did a potential being a customer walkthrough.
I love it.
So yes, I'm stoked to be here. Stoked to be talking again, reconnecting.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much for making the time. I think, today we're talking about first time winning a Grammy. And so I thought I would take us like all the way back to how you even got started in music.
Sure.
Yeah. Where did this whole thing kind of kick off for you?
I found it's funny that the more you go through life and talk to your parents as adults, you find out, or at least in my case, I find more and more out about my past and my family and my childhood than I knew or remembered.
Yeah.
From my mom, fairly recently, she had told me, she's like, you were in preschool, and I think it was Mrs. Rotberg, my teacher, who I saw, after I'd finished preschool. She knew my mom. She was like, Sam is showing musical talent, get him in piano or something sooner.
That early?
Yeah, it was probably 3 or 4, and I know I started around when I was 4. We had a piano, like an old piano that had been my grandma's, and my mom was like, do you want to take piano? And I said cool. And so I started then. I had a teacher we didn't like. She was kind of abusive, so I left after 4.5. Just imagine a teacher being abusive to a 4-year-old. That's just how ridiculous that is.
Yeah, but they're out there. I know the type of teacher. I took classical piano for 9 years as a kid, and I definitely had like 1 or 2 sprinkled in there. So
not uncommon in that.
Yeah.
World.
Mm-hmm.
It was Suzuki, so it was very rigid. But
okay.
Then I started again when I was 5, did Suzuki standard classical. They didn't teach me how to read music. That's the Suzuki. Yep. But I did train, I learned a lot. And I trained the right way from a technique standpoint. Very, versions of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for a year. Later, a few years later, I wanted to do some different styles. So my mom found me a more like general piano teacher. There was some classical, there was popular stuff, ragtime, whatever. But all written out. And then after a couple years with her, can't remember exactly, I got really inspired by jazz. We had a good jazz band in my junior high, and the high school had a really good jazz band. And it just gave me like kind of a carrot on a stick. And plus I started getting interested. My parents had a couple jazz CDs, like, CDs for sure is a little bit dating.
I mean, I'm right there with you. Exactly. Like what records were they? Do you remember?
We had Columbia House, which was for anyone younger. Well, it was kind of a set period of time where that was popular. It was a record club where anything on Columbia or their subsidiary labels, you could pay a subscription and if you signed up for it, you got like 10 free CDs. And then it was like one per month, but you had to say if you didn't want it. So got the 10 free, and it was really standard for people to get Kinda Blue, Miles Davis, Duke Ellington at Newport. And then there was one, I think it was Dave Brubeck Take Five, and there was maybe one other. So I had the real standard basic ones, classic album.
Classics, yeah.
And I bought this like cheap like 5 CD box set that had the big band, like stuff from like Glenn Miller, stuff from Benny Goodman, the Dorseys, I think, and then there was a couple other, Count Basie, of course. So then I got into big band and earlier stuff. So kind of like by accident, I started towards the beginning and started getting into like pianists of the 50s.
Sure.
And like I got really into Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, Red Garland, and then some other, and then it kind of went back later and checked out like Art Tatum and Bud Powell and stuff. And then just progressed through there. And when I was like later in high school, I got really into modern jazz. Basically, I was like a jazz Nazi. It's a weird term to use, but like we in the jazz world, it's like somebody that only listens to jazz, only thinks jazz is the only good genre of music.
Oh, I had a good like at least 5 years of that during my new school days and like post graduation. I like my friends couldn't stand me who weren't in jazz. They're like, "Oh my God, shut up about jazz."
Oh yeah, I specifically remember because I had a lot of civilian friends. My friend Dave Siegel, I haven't seen him in a while, but he coined that term for like non-musicians, and I feel like it's hilarious.
That's so great. Yeah.
So I still had a lot of non-jazz friends and non-music friends entirely. And I remember one of my friends from camp, we were listening to like an old Charlie Parker record, and my friend Kendra, love you Kendra, we're still in touch. She just turned it off. She's like, this is old. We need to listen to something. She listened to pop, like current, trendy.
Like top 40.
Seniors in high school. Like, yeah. And she grew up in
normal senior in high school music.
I think her dad literally lived in Normal, Illinois. Or no, I think he lived in Bloomington, but right by Normal, Illinois, which is a town.
That's great.
Anyway, I was like, no, screw that. I was like an only listen to jazz person. Like I felt like it was a waste of my musical time to listen to anything else. Now I eased on that when I got to college and got pulled back out of just jazz stuff by kind of stuff that's common for jazz people as a bridge. Michael Jackson's Off the Wall and Thriller, Steely Dan, Asia, and like Stevie Wonder, Talking Book specifically, is the album that really brought me into like more popular stuff. And then when I graduated college, I started getting inspired by like hip hop R&B production because the Neptunes were big at that time, so they're always doing stuff with cool chords. Jay-Z, Beyonce, and A. Marie's like albums that came out around that time, and then other like Neptunes production stuff really brought me in. I was like, oh, this is cool. You can do cool chords, have stuff that would be popular. And I got out of my just jazz. Justin Timberlake's album, that was a big one for me. Super musical, Justified. Great songwriting, super musical. Neptunes produced most of it. They had real strings. They had a lot of real instruments. So I remember actually I was on a jazz tour in Paris with Avishai Cohen, who I toured with for 3 years.
One of Matt's favorites.
Exactly. I met Matt right before I started touring with Avishai. And that was great. We met when we were both at university.
Yeah, anyone listening, my husband Matt is a bass player, and Matt and Sam have like toured together a ton and are
an excellent bass player.
I know. I'm on him all the time.
But he's so great. So yeah, stay on him. Fantastic about keeping on the gigs.
I know I am. He always jokes that like he doesn't know how to play bass anymore, and it makes me so sad because he's just like one of the most beautiful, especially, I mean, he's like so great on electric, but he's such a beautiful upright player too. And I wish I could have seen you guys play together. That would have been so sick, but maybe it can happen again now that we're in LA more.
I have a Tuesday night residency that I could get him on whenever if he wants to do it. It'll be an impetus for him to develop blisters on
his finger. I know he has like no more. I'll put a little worm in his ear,
So I was on tour with Avishai Cohen, a guy I toured with for 3 years, a great jazz bassist, and we played at a store called Fnac. It was like the big record store in France. and they give you one free item from the store for playing it. So Avishai and I actually both got Justified, the Justin Timberlake album, because we had heard it was great. He was into popular music too. And I remember sitting, it was like a turning point. I remember sitting on the roof because we were staying in this cool Airbnb, or not Airbnb, bed and breakfast, right in like a nice area of Paris. And I got the rooftop room. It came with its own rooftop balcony.
Nice.
And so I was sitting on the balcony drinking red wine, eating potato chips, and I put on the Justified album on my Discman with my headphones. And I was like, yo, I could do this stuff. Like, I'm into this, you know?
That was like the turning point for you when you started to think more about music production?
Yes, that was a turning point. I had produced with an artist who I went to college with, who I'm really close with, named Sarah Versprill. We had written and produced an EP of like more R&B pop stuff, but that was my foray, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I started writing pop stuff and R&B stuff and doing tracks. And then I started, doing a little more production stuff in the midst of still touring like all the time. I was on the road. I remember one year I did like 250 shows.
Whew.
I just remember that from doing my taxes. So any case, in my spare time, I was doing a lot more production writing, and I had some friends that were more established in that world or had done it more. And thankfully, I got feedback that was critical, but not like quit.
Yeah.
Like, some of this stuff is good, some of it's not that good. I can hear you improving. Just keep going at it. Like, one of those people was signed to like a legit record deal. Another was like a group I worked with, guys I became close with who were really good songwriters and producers. They weren't like big, but they were getting attention, and I knew that they were good at what they did.
Yeah, so it's like valuable feedback from people you respect who are doing the thing.
Yeah, which is good because I didn't need people to blow smoke.
Yeah.
And tell me I was great when I wasn't. I didn't really need people to tell me this is so bad, you should stop. I mean, I doubt I would have. That was a way of me to keep going in a constructive manner.
It's always interesting to see how someone started and all the kind of little steps that you don't really realize at the time lead you to like where you are now and what you're doing now, because I feel like I could probably speak for most people on this in music. It's like it never looks the way you think it's going to look when you first start, right? Like the trajectory is like winding, weaving, turning, ups, downs. Like it's not just a steady like trajectory to a Grammy.
Yeah, for sure. There's also the fact that the music business has changed so drastically over the past 10 years. I've been in, for the time I've been in LA I feel like been when streaming started like 2 years after I moved. The changes like every like 6 months, there's a new paradigm. So even if you start with a long-term goal, and I do believe in having goals and working towards them, but I also believe that they can bring you forward, but then new paths may open that you didn't know existed and maybe didn't exist when you started. So you have to stay nimble. And yes, the path can be circuitous, it can be rocky, it can be like not making any big impacts in a commercial way for a long time, and then maybe having one that helps bring you to another level. But then there's such a what have you done for me lately mentality with certain people.
Yeah.
That you may experience like peaks and valleys in terms of opportunities.
I would love to hear what that, like what your kind of mindset was at that time when you were putting the work in and hoping that it would pay off, and what the work actually looked like for you during that time.
Yeah, so I would call that my like took a step back to make a step forward period of time. So I had finished my run with Avishai Cohen's album. So after that, I made the decision that during my free time, I was going to be focusing on doing songwriting, production, and working on my solo project. So I did that. I had a great guy who approached me about managing me at that time, which was really cool. He was a great guy. He believed in me. That was helpful. But after doing the album and like a year of like doing one show a month of under my name in New York and doing some touring, I realized that it wasn't really a full passion of mine at that time to be a band leader, to be a
Mm,
solo band leader. And I
mm.
I went a bit left in terms of I was established in the jazz world like good amount from doing Avishai and playing a lot around New York with different artists. And if I had like chosen more like jazz names for my album and done it kind of more in a similar direction to what my Avishai stuff was, I probably would have picked up a lot more interest from promoters. There's always a name cachet game and like
Yeah.
a do what you're known for thing, but I was
Hmm.
just going with my heart and what the musicians I thought were helping me achieve that sound at the time.
Yeah.
During that time and after, I was doing jazz gigs and relying on the stuff I had developed to make living, and I got into R&B world at that time, was doing gigs doing that. But I really spent my spare time not pursuing more bigger jazz opportunities, not going out to jam sessions that much, not participating as much in that scene other than getting called for stuff.
Was that difficult for you to say no to things? Because I've been in that luck, I think it's a nice position to be in, but I've definitely been in that position before too, where there have been some pretty sweet opportunities on the table, but you like kind of painfully have to say no because you want to follow through on the thing that you are like, well, if this pays off, my soul will actually feel like
Mhm.
lit, you know?
I will say it wasn't as much me turning down paid work as it was I had had the mentality, the like success in the jazz world mentality, which is like, again, what have you done for me lately? Who is like the biggest jazz name you've played with lately?
Yeah,
Are you out on the scene all the time, going to shows and showing face? Because that's when more opportunities come your way.
totally.
Tours, gigs, and I withdrew. It took me about a year to mentally change my mindset
Okay.
about how to approach a music career and to get out of that jazz name mentality. It was a difficult period for me because it was so ingrained in me and it's how I developed my career at the time. And so that was tough, but I spent a lot of time with my production partner at the time, Curtis, just like most of our free time, working on production and stuff. And we worked for a few months and then it was only on one hard drive, all of our stuff, and that hard drive failed. So we got zeroed out,
Uh,
took a couple months off, got back in, started doing more backup. And that's when Kurt and I found a bunch of independent artists to work with. We didn't have any connections really to shop beats or
mm,
pre-done songs. So it was like, let's do like essentially a demo, but fully produced songs. And then we have like a real calling card. And you never know what's going to happen with one of these artists.
yeah.
So we had some of the artists did something. One of the artists, Alexander the Great, he like won or came in second on like a big BET, search for rappers show.
Cool.
We produced a couple songs that he did on TV, which was really cool. It didn't lead to like him being like a major star, but so we had a little taste of like, oh, our music's good enough to like be here and here.
Yeah.
But ultimately after that, I lost a little faith in relying on doing stuff for artists that had to then do it themselves, like pursue like opportunities for themselves. Most of the ones that we had worked with kind of for one reason or another stopped promoting their stuff even on an independent level. And so I was like, you know what, I need to have a project where I have more control over stuff. So then I got the opportunity to produce a couple full albums, which kind of came about from like having that demo.
Hmm.
One of the artists unfortunately passed away from COVID. So shout to Alana Martin. Miss
Oh
you, Alana.
man.
It was sad, but I got to learn a lot from that experience, and I produced another full album for an artist named Jen Snowden. So I got the experience of what it was like to do something front to back. Now then the 2008 hit, everything economically, like in a lot of cases, fell. So I was getting paid production work that was pretty good, and then a lot of that dried up. Around that time is when I linked with Jesse Palter, who we were friends and had been writing for a couple of years, but
Hmm.
we made the decision like the songs we're doing are really good. We should actually like pursue this as a thing. So we
Hmm.
did started Palter Ego, which was our duo project. It was us two writing and producing the music. So did that as like my main career focus. It was an avenue to be producing and writing, and we controlled the releases. We
Yeah.
controlled how hard we worked for opportunities. and that felt good. And we were making some, we're making some waves in Chicago. She was living in Chicago at the time, and I'm from there, so I was going back there a lot. And that brought us to a place where like we were taking it seriously, we were getting some traction, and it was like we should probably live in the same city if we're gonna make this a thing.
Yeah.
And we both visited LA for a month and took meetings and went out basically every night, kind of like utilized every connection we could muster. And after that month, we were both like, this is the place. Like, I got the sense that LA was known as a pop haven for movies, commercial, studio stuff. It had a really poor reputation for jazz and creative music at that time, or creative pop. It wasn't the center for hip hop. There was LA artists were really not. There was a real dip in their notoriety on a national and international level. There were just great artists here in LA and people working, but it wasn't a hub. It was like very, very much less than what it is now, where it's like the hub for everything, basically. So, but I got the sense that LA had a lot to offer that people weren't up on yet. There was really good jazz people there.
Yeah.
There was a scene of musicians who I had gotten to know that were doing interesting creative music. And I was like, I could also make a living doing live gigs here while in pursuit of doing the production. She was able to move here a little before me.
Okay.
A year for me to get my affairs in order.
Yeah.
I owned a co-op, which is an apartment with similar to a condo for people that don't understand, but with some
I remember that. Yeah.
Some different rules, just for the non kind of New York people, because it's really just mostly common there. Anyway, I was trying to sell it, but it was 2000. It was early 2010s. The market still was difficult. Couldn't sell it. At a certain point, I was just like, I just got to get out there. And I had been visiting still and keeping my connects up. So I was pretty up and running within a couple months in terms of like working a lot on the gigging scene.
Yeah.
And I was able to like make a living and pay rent and stuff.
Amazing.
I was in a decent position, and Alter Ego was really still the focus for about the first 2 years I was there. And then we just hit a wall where we had released 2 EPs, 2 full-length albums. We would work like hours every day at it. We were doing shows. We'd had some decent paying shows, a couple Vegas residencies, a couple international things, but it was like still just in the red. And neither of us were in the position where we wanted to go do like a van tour and like the real
grind it out.
Yeah, the nitty gritty, which is still a legitimate way to develop a career. But neither of us wanted to do that. I was like 30s, my early 30s, and so at that point, I had met DJ Khalil when I had like first moved to LA within 3 or 4 months, and we had worked together a handful of times, but we weren't like working super consistently. But I remember he called me on the phone, was like, "Yo, Barsh, like my new studio downtown opened up, and I'm just gonna want you to be around a lot more if you're down." And it was right at the time where it was like Alter Ego was gonna go on a hiatus.
Yeah.
Due to financial hardship, essentially. So I started working with Khalil like pretty regularly, and one of the first sessions we did, it may have been the second session we did over there, was with Aloe Black. Because he's like, I'm going to be producing Aloe's album. And one of the first sessions we did with Aloe, out of that came The Man, which, months later we found out it was in a Beats by Dre commercial, really big one, like national campaign. And that inspired the label to actually promote it as a single, because they didn't really like the song before. It's a classic story you hear. Label doesn't think a song's going to be popular, won't put money behind it. Then it gets popular to no reason that they did anything.
Yeah.
Like, oh shoot. So
and they're like, we were always behind this. This song is so great.
So typical. But so essentially within a year of starting to work with Khalil, we had a #1 song. At first it hit #1 on the iTunes R&B charts, which back then the iTunes charts actually meant more at the time, because it meant it was like really selling a lot. and then it made top 10.
No, that song was huge. I
Yeah.
mean, that song was everywhere. I like how did it feel to see your work out in the world like that?
Like a lot of things in the business, some of the back end stuff hadn't been worked out by that
Mm,
time. A lot of stuff gets like registered and dealt with like, months
much
later,
later, yeah.
which is maybe strange for people not in the music business. So it was funny to have the song was number one song in the UK, like on the pop charts, and I didn't even know till like a few weeks after. I wasn't I was like tapped into where it was in America to an extent, and it went platinum like not long after it came out, which was a big deal. But like I hadn't had as much experience with stuff not being settled
Mm,
before it was out, so it was a funny feeling. I was like, this is great. Our names are at least credited, but we're like there's just still a lot of like stuff to work out, and just with that whole album. But then I just learned that that's just how it goes
yeah.
sometimes, and it's been an accepted practice in the music in the record business specifically that people just don't care. They'll just release stuff and deal with it later. The movie I've learned that like movie stuff, syncs and stuff, they're better about getting it organized beforehand.
Yeah.
I think just the film industry is like as kind of corrupt as a lot of these businesses are. The film industry is a little more professional.
Yeah.
The unions are stronger. The penalties for using intellectual property without permission are probably a lot worse
Yeah.
and a lot more financially costly for them. So you can actually, the average person, if you have an album cut, even if it's on a major artist and they use it without your approval, you're really just going to try to get the publishing split. No
Yeah.
lawyer is going to take on the case for something
Yeah.
that's not going to make that much money. So, and this is a bit of a sidetrack, but so it's a funny feeling, and we can get into this with the Grammys as well. I am proud of the major stuff that I've done. Like I have close to 20 gold and platinum records from stuff that really most of it came about from just trying to be as creative as possible,
Mm,
not trying to chase that.
yeah.
I'm proud and like, feel fortunate for that. But no one achievement is some sort of magic bullet of pride and happiness.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, now that I've had a number of things go, be successful and get recognized, it's like a sign of relief.
Mm,
Another thing happens. It's like, oh, I'm not like a has-been yet. Like
yeah.
something went gold or platinum this year, or I had a release with a major artist. And at the same time, I recognize how not zen that is, and I'm really at my core that my values aren't external, but being in this business and realizing that things like that help your career and help open doors to positive creative experiences, to
Yeah.
things that can be holistic and very humanizing when you're working. But a lot of times to get those opportunities, you need the superficial success, open doors. So
I think relevancy is everything in this industry, and I think, like I was saying to you before we even started thinking about dipping my toe back into the music industry again, I'm like, man, I haven't really done anything of note in like a good 3 to 4 years. Like, and that's something that I'm always kind of thinking about. And then I'm like, well, the more I think about it, the further the window of time is going to be from the last like relevant thing I did, and it does feel like if that's not what necessarily drives you, but it drives other people, how do you kind of like walk that line and find that peace within yourself of like just making creative choices, but also knowing you still need to be doing these things that are going to help you move forward in your career? It's tough to balance that.
sure, for sure. And I have a number of fires going at once. Like I still do probably around 100 live shows a year. And
Hmm.
it sounds like a lot, but two a week,
Yeah.
then you get to 100, but it is, when I look back, it's like, what, I balance a lot. So I enjoy it. It's a good extra source of income. It keeps me making music with like an immediate end result. You're
Yeah.
performing, people are hearing it, they're getting in, it's serving some purpose, whether they're getting a lot of enjoyment out of watching, or it's a private event where it's just setting the tone
Yeah.
for stuff. Records, you do it, you can enjoy it, but you don't know, it's unlikely to come out. The percentage is low, it'll come out, and you wait months, and then by the time stuff comes out, sometimes I forgot even doing it. So
Yeah.
but so the gigs is a big part of of my, it's like a hedge against stuff being slow in the studio world. Also, I work with a lot of independent artists where I get paid up front to work on their stuff. Often it's stuff I didn't write. And I really enjoy that. With indie artists, if they're paying for it, it's much more likely that it'll come out. You get to really work on stuff from start to finish. Like a lot of sessions with like signed artists, rappers, singers. You'll do a day or two, and usually you don't actually fully finish the song. Sometimes you do, but then you wait, months to see if it's going to make the album. Then you'll get the files back and have to polish it or whatever, So between all those things, and then occasionally I'll just do studio stuff where I'm not producing or writing, but somebody hires me to just play keys. So
yeah, diversity definitely is super important for sure. I think like that's something I've learned as well from being in the music industry for this long. It's like if you can be good at a few things that you also enjoy doing, hopefully kind of helps pad those quiet moments when one thing is down, maybe something else is popping off.
Sure. And royalties now, they're improving, and there's, there will be new exciting sources of revenue in the future. Is likely. But for now, it's a real valley in terms of how much songwriting royalties pay. So a lot of songwriters that aren't producers or musicians or do something else to make like now money and that just rely on their back end royalties, that is a very, I would say, a bad career choice at this point. A lot of people that have had hits, consistent releases, are not making enough money to live. So I don't like to be pessimistic or be a complainer, but I have to say that's just like, if you're just a full-time songwriter now, unless you're like in the very, the 1% of the 1%, you're probably doing something else for money, or still living off your advance, or taking advance from
sorry guys.
No, it's okay. We gotta love that.
I mean, like along this whole journey for you, as you've kind of gone through these different iterations of your career and the ways you've kind of chosen to take different twists and turns and stuff, was there ever a time where you were like, winning a Grammy would be the penultimate thing for me? I know a lot of people do think that, but I don't see that being the thing that you were thinking about. But was it even something that ever even crossed your mind?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I went to Grammys when I was 16 in my jazz Nazi days. I made the Grammy band, the Grammy National Combo, which was a big deal at the time. But it was like they took like 40 kids from America, took us to New York for 10 days. We worked every day at LaGuardia High School for the Arts, recorded at the Hit Factory. We played at the Grammy nominees party in the Temple of Dender at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and then got to go to the Grammys. So it was great for me because I was around amazing jazz musicians. I made friends that I'm still close with. But we went to the Grammys, and being so against pop music entirely, I thought it was so lame. It was wasted on me, basically. And then even knowing like the jazz people that were nominated, I was like, these are just kind of like names, front runner people, not the people doing the real stuff that I'm checking out, that all the cats are checking out.
Yeah. Not the deep cut shit.
Yes, exactly. Or like the stuff that's really bubbling on the scene. Like if you're in the jazz world, it's not even a deep cut, not getting recognized.
Women's health is extremely important to me, and I think modern fertility is one of the most exciting, accessible new advancements to come out in recent years to help us really understand our bodies more. Whether you're ready to pop out a mini-me like yesterday, or the thought of being someone's parent after the night you had last night seems light years away, knowledge is power. Understanding how our bodies work to better be able to prepare for the future and take better care of ourselves right now is game-changing. Modern Fertility doesn't just offer fertility testing. It also offers birth control, prenatal vitamins, ovulation and pregnancy tests, and just launched a sperm kit. Because fertility isn't just a woman's job, okay? So click the link in the show notes for $10 off your Modern Fertility hormone test and join the thousands of women who refuse to let fertility be a mystery. Now, back to the show.
So I paid little to zero attention to the Grammys and never watched them. all the years I was in New York, even when I started getting into pop stuff, I just
Mm,
thought it was BS, total BS.
yeah.
And then I moved to LA, and then when the Aloe Black album got nominated for Best R&B album, I think it was the same year the Aloe album and Kendrick Lamar's first Grammy-winning single, which I worked on, called "I." They were nominated. I believe they were nominated in the same year, and I hadn't even thought. I thought Aloe. I had kind of had it in my head that maybe like I was kind of aware of Grammy stuff at that point,
Yeah.
being in LA and in that scene, it was like a little more talked about.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of forgot that the Kendrick song was going to be eligible, and then it was so I had like three things nominated like in that year, and I
So
hadn't even
crazy.
heard to me. And so then a guy I know, Jerry L. Johnson, great guy who at the time was working in the LA Recording Academy office, and he was like, "Yo, man, you got to become a member. You know, you can vote for your stuff. You know, they weren't discouraging that. Not that you're just supposed to vote for all of your stuff. He was basically like, you should become a member. You have stuff now that's nominated." And
And that's like essentially how the Grammys work. Like you have all these members, like the Academy, right? Like
yes,
and
the Recording Academy.
yeah, and so you vote on people's projects and that's like how you win
That's how it
essentially.
works. So they rushed my application through. At the time it was much easier. Now it's a longer process. They've tried to get people out that aren't active in music, and they want
Mm,
people in, and they require recommendations. I only get you only get two per year as a member, and every year I have more than two people ask me, but I appreciate the fact I get to help colleagues join
yeah.
and people that I know are going to vote for music that they really believe in and not
Yeah.
name stuff. So
Yeah.
in any case, at that point, I got much more aware of the Grammys, and I got involved actually with the Recording Academy. Now done four of these. They've changed the name of it, and now I believe it's called District Advocate Day, and we meet with Congress people and advocate for issues important to the music community. It helped the Music Modernization Act get passed.
Amazing.
And so I've met in 2 years I was a team captain, which meant I was the one in communication with everybody. I led the discussions. We met with Rep. Judy Chu, who represents the San Gabriel Valley, major ally. Met with Adam Schiff, who's now known on the national scene. At the time, nobody knew him from Adam. It's funny to use that term. His name is Adam. These areas around Los Angeles tend to be sympathetic to creators.
Mm,
Now we are at one thing I defend about Adam Schiff. Some people like him, some people don't. He's a lightning rod now because he's a national figure, but he has Disney and ABC in his district, which those companies tend to be at odds with a lot of creators' rights, and he's very much on our side. So that may be due to the fact maybe Disney and ABC aren't like huge donors to his campaign, or
mm,
maybe he just has the ethics of like his actual constituents, because those
sure.
companies aren't residents. They're
Yeah.
not voters. Anyway,
Yeah.
point being, I really gained respect for the Recording Academy from those programs,
Yeah.
realizing it's not just the awards, which are self-congratulatory. Let's be honest,
Yeah.
all of them are. They heavily favor stuff that's been promoted, that's on major labels. There is backdoor horse trading of votes. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know I don't have like Watergate style evidence of it, but
But
like,
you're not the first person I've heard mention this. I've had friends like talk to me about, kind of like trying to rally people to vote for projects and
mhm.
labels kind of sending out gifts casually, maybe around the same time, wink, wink, that like voting is
Yes.
up, things like that. That I don't think a lot of the general public kind of knows that this is how I think they just think like, oh, people vote on it and that's it. And it's like actually it's not all just like, hey, who put out the best music,
So what
which
has
is subjective anyway, right? But
100%. So what's changed over the last couple of years is that they had committees for a lot of genres where essentially the top, I know some people that were in them, and I'm not saying anything that's confidential, but the way they worked, from what I was informed by multiple participants, is that the top 15 vote getting recordings in any given category went to committee, and then they would whittle it down, and there was an opportunity for people to present stuff that maybe didn't get votes but was a quality piece of work. So in that way it was cool. And if it was something that you were on, I heard you had to leave the room.
okay.
So people couldn't advocate for their own stuff. Now they could advocate maybe for people they were connected to otherwise, But these were made up of creators, these committees. And so sometimes something that was really great that got no attention because of this committee concept could actually receive a nomination, which was a good thing. Though there was complaints that within the committees, there may have been some backdoor stuff, maybe we're going to let this person get a nomination type of thing. I can't advocate, I can't say one way or the other of that, but there was reports of it. So they've now eliminated those committees and it's just a straight up or down, straight popularity vote. Now, cool. And I will say the votes are tabulated by a Big Four accounting firm. So the at least appearance of legitimacy, it's through a third party. Their reputation is their key, the key. Ernst & Young or Deloitte, I mean, you can't be known for a scandal. It's going to kill your business.
Yeah.
So therein may be something that can cast a bit more legitimacy, at least of the vote counting.
Yeah.
That being said, I think for the Big Four awards, it's likely that there may be some things that go on at the top.
And can you say what the Big Four are for anyone listening to this who maybe doesn't know?
I apologize. So
no, it's okay.
In the Grammys, you can choose, now the voting, you can only choose 3 subgenres to vote in, and then the awards in those categories. But everyone can vote in the Big Four awards, which is Best New Artist, Record of the Year, Album of the Year, and Song of the Year. So for those, it wouldn't surprise me if the heads are like, this is gonna go, whatever. But I don't want to denigrate it entirely, because as a voting member, I do feel that it's at least somewhat democratic in the way that it works. And for some of the smaller categories, since they limit how many categories you can vote in, I mean, there might be just like a couple hundred people voting in them.
Yeah.
So if you have made waves within your community, even if you're not like super known, you could actually get a Grammy nomination or win a Grammy. Some of the jazz and instrumental categories, some of the regional music stuff, where niche categories, where most people wouldn't even really know who to vote for.
Yeah.
Essentially, this was a long answer to a short question. I started being aware and actually caring somewhat about the Grammys a couple years after I lived in LA, because I was involved in a scene where stuff was actually, had a chance.
Yeah. Did you win that year for the Aloe Blacc and Kendrick Lamar records? Or
so the Grammys have kind of like there's like 3 tiers of being recognized for winning an award. If you worked on something in a capacity other than like a named capacity, like I was a musician on Kendrick, and I was a songwriter and a musician on the Aloe album. But an album, it doesn't reward every writer. Album of the Year does now, but what happened on those, Kendrick song won 2 Grammys and the Aloe album was nominated. For all of it, you can like pay $50 and you get like a nice participation certificate from the Grammy. It says you contributed to this Grammy winning or Grammy nominated thing, but you're not really considered a winner. Then there's like a middle tier, which is what I won last year, which is like for best melodic rap performance. That's what Hurricane won, the Kanye West single. So they give the trophies to the artists, and to writers and producers they send you a winner certificate, not one you have to pay for. It's like a little nicer.
Sure.
I always say my work has won 4 Grammys. I don't be like Grammy, 4-time Grammy winning person.
But I mean, you made your work. So
some people say that. Yeah. I just like to keep it real. Yeah. So some people are like, Grammy winning, Grammy nominated, whatever. I try to keep it real as a member of the Academy. So I may be able to say I am a Grammy winner, but I can definitely say my work has won 4 and been nominated like 12 or 13 times.
Yeah. That's very humble of you. I appreciate the technicality.
It's all good. It's about the work.
Yeah.
And a lot of these rules are arbitrary, and this is where my kind of mixed, I don't have a binary opinion of pretty much anything. The Grammy organization, the Recording Academy, does a lot of positive stuff. It's also, a lot of it's just like a name thing. Certain people in certain categories, they're just going to get nominated no matter what they put out. That's annoying. The rules on like who's considered an actual winner and who gets a statue are very arbitrary. They change every year. And so stuff like that is, again, it's awards. It doesn't it doesn't mean that the art was great. I don't mean to criticize people where it's their biggest goal, but it's a little shallow. It's not even, I wouldn't even say it's as significant as having a gold or platinum record, because what that means is that the general public listened to
Yeah.
a lot. Especially with streaming now, because you can go gold or platinum from streaming, and a song may not have been on the radio. It may not have been a thing where it might have sold as much when people were buying downloads, but like it's a real democratization in terms of the price point of having streaming, and then the amount of ears that are hearing stuff. So this is my confliction about the Grammys. And also, I have to say, on a personal level, having had stuff, I think it's like 8 out of the last 10 years that was nominated or won, it started again to become a sense of relief if I had something in there. And there's been like the last few years, I was like, I don't have it. I probably have nothing that's going to be in there. I got like kind of a surprise nomination for Best R&B Song a couple years ago for Collide, which was a song by Tiana Major 9 and Earth Gang. It was promoted by the label, but it never super caught on. It wasn't like top 40. But then the nominations came out, and my phone started getting blown up. Actually, as a side note, this is a very funny story. So this is the first time I was officially a nominee. So in any case, we were in the process of looking at condos, and it was during peak COVID. We saw like 26 apartments. So we had been going constantly, and we were looking in an area that was like 45 minutes to an hour from where I was currently living. So we're driving, we have to get to a place at like 10:30 in the morning. Now during COVID, there wasn't a ton of traffic for a while, as I'm sure everyone experienced. It was very noticeable how much less traffic there was. So we left, whatever, we're driving. They were doing the live nomination announcements for the Grammys. And you could get it on your phone. You could just go to Grammy.com. So I had it up on my phone. I'm streaming it, waiting for our category. Because at that point, I didn't think Collide was going to be a contender, but a couple of the people that I worked on the song with were like, yo, it's like, get people to maybe vote. Just tell people about it.
Sure.
And we use like Waze, and it tells us to get off the freeway and go under this like local route under this overpass. And we're just stuck behind a ton of trucks. We're going to be late. My wife is just, nervous about being late, not in the best mood. I feel bad because I encouraged her to do that navigation.
Go that way, yeah.
And right when they get to the Best R&B Song category, my internet gets funky. And the phone just like, it stalls and stops. So I'm like probably 10 seconds away from finding out if we are nominated, and it just cuts out, and it's just stress in the car. Immediately, two close friends of mine and people I work with are hitting me. Yo, congratulations. I can't even be happy about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're late to this thing. My wife's upset. I'm stressed. We're stuck behind these freaking trucks under this like nasty looking part of LA overpass. It took like 2 hours for me to be like
come down and be
and even then I am like, I always temper everything. Like I have a hard time letting myself be like, yeah, like it's, I'm bipolar. I'm always like, yo, that wasn't good enough. You're still kind of a failure. Like you need to keep doing more. It's just a nomination. It's not a important category. We're not going to win. All those type of things go through my head like all the time. I've been
you can't like be in the moment and just be like, okay, it's cool that like this even happened.
Yeah.
It's like always kind of the next thing.
I can be in the moment in a lot of like creating and in other parts of life, but if it's some sort of like achievement that's supposed to make you feel more accomplished and like proud of yourself, I have a little bit of a difficult time with that. With some reflection, I can be like, oh, I'm proud of this body of work. And maybe when I'm speaking of it to people as a way to kind of establish credibility and maybe get more opportunities, it sounds impressive. But like me, myself, it is a little difficult. And honestly, like my family is super supportive, but they're like used to it as well. So it's kind of like, I don't know how excited anybody gets anywhere. Maybe they do and like don't tell me.
Yeah.
But I thankfully do have a lot of close friends and family that I know are proud of me and give me encouragement, and they find some inspiration in my like work ethic, which I'm happy about that more than anything external. I do take a lot of pride in my work ethic. And I felt a similar thing when the Kendrick stuff won. It was weird. We had a little housewarming party at my apartment, and it was like a Grammy watching thing. We watched it was in the pre-show, and I remember almost just like going and thanking everybody, and I felt like such a schmuck. I was like, am I giving like an acceptance speech to my like friends and family? And like they were into it, but I felt like a phony, you know. I was like, well, I'm not going to get a statue, so this is bullshit. It's not real. And I remember like texting a friend of mine that night. I think the bipolar thing, really, I don't have the super extremes where I have manic delusions, and I don't mean to denigrate people that do by calling them delusions, but you could really get out of sanity when you have a real manic episode. I don't have those, but I vacillate constantly. And I was like texting a friend of mine, like, I know you don't think I'm that great, like, you know, like all this shit. And she was like, what are you talking about? An artist that I work with a lot. So my brain is funny like that. And it's just not always the celebratory thing that people may think from the outside. And I recall I read a book by Joe Pantoliano. He's a known actor. You know, he's not like maybe world famous, but he's been in big stuff, and he played Ralphie in The Sopranos, which is my favorite show. A lot of this book was about his struggles with mental health. And he said when he won the Emmy for Best Supporting Actor, and his character in The Sopranos is what I would say one of the all-time great performances that I've ever seen. He said in his head goes, fuck this, it's not an Oscar, you know, like it's not good enough. That went through his mind. So at the same time, I am very self-aware that that's a funky mentality, part of my story that I'm working on.
Do you ever find too, I know for me, when I've hit career goals, there's this massive come down that happens after it, because it's like there's some kind of like beauty in, not to sound I don't know, like trite, but there's some kind of beauty in the struggle that you don't recognize when you're struggling or when you're working towards something. And then you achieve this thing, and there's this like momentary bliss. And then it's like immediately followed by either what you were talking about, this like you're just thinking about, oh, but it's not this thing, or like I didn't actually deserve that, or whatever. Or I've felt like, oh, well, I did that thing now. Like, what else do I do? You know, like now I know what that feels like, and I'm not just chasing it anymore. And like, what a gift to know what working towards your goal and achieving that goal feels like. But also, like, it's this very strange feeling that you're like, wow, okay, so I can't put all of my hopes and dreams and joy on just this one aspect of my life, you know?
100%. I always say you got to enjoy the journey, because there's no magic bullet, again, that's going to make you happy just because you achieved something. That's not how we work as humans. You got to enjoy the process, because that's your daily life. Because I haven't gone to the Grammys as an adult till this past year. There's multiple years where I had stuff in the Grammys, they maybe even won, and I was in the studio that night. I even to your point, going to the Grammys this year, win or not, it was such a good experience. The experience of it. Was in Vegas this year. My wife and I went, which was awesome. We spent, a couple months getting her outfits. She had time to try different stuff. We were able to find good prices on stuff. I got my tux. And it was just nice to have that time, that experience. We got there. We stayed in the hotel where the Grammys were, so we were super central. And all I did was connect with musician friends of mine, guys I've known from the jazz world, many of whom for over 20 years. So my closest friends, and hung out, went to jams, didn't go to any industry douchebag parties. I don't like those. I will go to them, but I don't think it's tooting my own horn to say I'm a very honest and genuine person. I find a lot of value in that. I am good with small talk, but I'm not into going those places. Somebody's looking over their shoulder for someone else more important.
Yes.
It's all their whole life. A lot of these people's whole life is the music industry, and mine, as much as I work, is not. My family, wife, and a lot of my close friends are just not in the business, and it's good for me to have that perspective. So anyway, it was such a positive experience. Hurricane, we did end up winning. We didn't get album of the year, but I felt that was unlikely with Mr. West's behavior leading up to the Grammys. And we don't have to dwell on his current behavior, but I will say, aside from as a Jewish person and as a major advocate of the Black community, a lot of my best friends and colleagues are Black. His offensive comments have gotten a lot of attention in that realm, thankfully. But what a lot of people don't talk about is the incredible people that have worked on his team for years, and that work on whether it's the design for his fashion, the Sunday service choir, producers and writers in the studio that will spend that, like, their full time, in a lot of cases, career is working with him and on his stuff. It's not a one-man show. He has blown up many careers of amazing, creative, talented people, a couple of whom are good friends of mine. And I feel like that is sad. And I feel that back to the Grammys, his behavior definitely hurt the album of the year chances.
Yeah.
So whatever, point being, awards aside, that the experience of being there with people that I cared about, it was great to see they're all doing great stuff. Old friends cannot be replaced. You knew people before you did stuff in your career. There's no replacing that.
Yeah. And it is like a really beautiful thing, I think, to see people you've come up with doing well,
Especially
and
people you like. If you have a shitty character, maybe you're not as happy about it. But like, I even have people that were like, I've known that were like interns and runners that are now like successful, Grammy nominated, #1 songs. And this is just even from the time I've been in LA.
Yeah.
So always, it's always smart to be nice to people. It's smart to keep your contacts going. Just to stay in touch with people that you've worked with that you like, because you never know what's going to come of that. I've had major opportunities come from people I haven't talked to in like a super long time.
Do you feel like having your work, having won multiple Grammys now, having been nominated, do you feel like that's changed your career at all?
More so having records get noticed for their quality and notoriety. Being on To Pimp a Butterfly, where I co-wrote, institutionalized, and played on I, but I was there from the start to finish, creating I from scratch. So that has been a big boon. That and Anderson Paak, one of his most popular songs is a song we did from scratch, Heart Don't Stand a Chance. And Malibu, I feel like Malibu, the album, and To Pimp a Butterfly, the album, if they maintain their status, are going to be all-time classic albums.
Yeah, I think so too.
And to be, especially coming from the jazz world, and those were really pivotal in bringing jazz type of stuff back into the mainstream. So I take a lot of pride in those, and being on those albums, Grammys or not, that was a big that the quality of the music has been, and the attention it's gotten, that's been more of a boon to my career.
Yeah.
Co-writing The Man, Aloe Black, which was a huge song, that opened a lot of doors. I was renting my own room at Khalil's studio for years. We had shared the studio, and Daniel Seif, other guy that wrote that song, we worked a lot together, and we still do. But we were having sessions like almost every day come in of like major artists and really cool stuff, and that a lot of that came from The Man. And Khalil was already established as a producer. But that song was like, oh, like, you guys aren't just hip hop,
Yeah.
I don't think the Grammys, other than maybe having some industry people like hear about you, especially since they do not equate to commercial success. Really, the almighty dollar is what drives the business side of this. Not every creative cares about that, but that's what opens doors from the label, publishing, management side of things. That's why commercial success and attention, I think, has mattered a lot more than Grammy wins for me. I think as an artist, if you are a performing artist, touring artist, winning a Grammy can really help, especially in genres, I should say, where it's not super commercial, but like blues, jazz, Zydeco, there's all these like subcategories. If you win a Grammy, the promoters and the people in those scenes, I think that can really help you there.
Sure, like legitimize you and maybe like open some doors that
Tour
uh
opportunities. Yes.
yeah.
And I think the Grammy thing has helped me get stuff,
Like
but
maybe just like get people's trust a little faster.
yeah, or like I do some trio shows. I've started doing more of my own stuff over the last couple years. And again, as an artist, that looks good.
Yeah.
Somebody getting booked for sessions and stuff as a producer writer, the commercial success matters more than the award.
Mm-hmm.
Which depending on your on what you get nominated or win for, it might cost you more to go to the Grammys than you ended up making on the song because
Right, right.
it can get expensive, especially if you
Yeah.
don't live where they are.
Yeah, because you got to pay for your tickets, right?
Even as a nominee, you have to pay.
Yeah.
And you if you don't live in LA, which is where they pretty much always are, you got to come out here.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to spend money on food and lodging and airfare and don't forget the clothing aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, it may be a little more straightforward with a suit or a tuxedo type of thing, but you can still spend money there. And then women, it's much more common obviously to do makeup, hair,
Yeah. Glam, full
and
glam. Yeah.
so some
Yeah.
are more involved with like good hairstyling and shit. I've been shaving my head for 20 years, so that's not a problem for
Done
me.
and done, you know. But yeah, I mean that's a good point though. Is that I think something I didn't realize when I was coming up like music or thinking about wanting to have a career in music, I didn't realize how much money it just takes to, especially if you're pursuing being an artist, to obviously make records, pay people to play on those records, pay people to play in live shows. Sometimes you have to pay to play shows. You're buying wardrobe, and then it's like, these award shows, it's like, unless you're at a certain point in your career and people are sending you clothes they want you to wear, you have to pay for all of that as well. And I think I always love to talk with people about the realness of it as well. Like, it is such an incredible industry to be a part of, it at the same time I feel like the more information you have as a young like musician or artist or writer or producer going into this, and you can kind of be like, okay, these are some of the realities of the situation. You can kind of mentally prepare more for what's ahead of you, because I think a lot of people be like, oh, like I'm nominated for a Grammy. I just rock up and it's like a party, right? And that's it,
Yeah, there's a lot of external viewpoints of how things are, and then there's how they really are. Now, there's also it's subjective. They really are different things to different people. But I will say that, I'll say that being at the Grammys and being at the nominees brunch, it's not like everyone's there is ecstatic. That's just not how it is. There's still people that are, looking for someone important to talk to, or are stressed out, or just not smiling. We got to do the red carpet this year, and some people are more nervous looking than others. I was
Sure.
into it. I was very glad that I got to bring my wife to that.
That must have been such a cool experience together. I mean, and also too, like, what does it actually feel like in that moment, like when the project you're on, the name gets called as the winner?
For this last one, they have the pre-telecast and then they have the main one. Now,
Hmm.
our category was so far behind. They were running really far behind in the pre-show. You're only supposed to make a 60-second speech. People get gratuitous. The presenters take time. They tried. It was pretty efficient, but we had to leave to go to the red carpet or we were going to miss it. And I didn't get to be in the pre-show hall for the announcement of our category.
Oh no.
When I got to the red carpet, my wife and I, and we met up with the other guys that I worked on the song with, and we were all together next to this wall, and Khalil got a call. We won. So we all got to be there together. It was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the most extreme thing that I found very impressive and like surprising in a way to see, you have a wall of press from all over the world. There is like, you feel like you are really at something extremely important. It's almost like you're at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Or
Right.
like, it was immense. Press from everywhere.
Yeah.
But it was just, that was cool. And then when we finished doing the photos for, Getty Images or whatever, I'm walking, towards the entrance to go in. Joni Mitchell, she's in a wheelchair. She's not, I don't think, she's not disabled now, but she's just getting older. And
Yeah.
so I got her in a wheelchair. We lock eyes. She goes, "You look good." I was
Stop it.
and then I was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And I was like, "Can I get a picture?" But then like she was like, "Sure." But then they like had to move her, so I didn't get a picture. But that was like not like an I can die now moment, but that was like a
pretty close,
pretty cool. And then my wife was
Wow.
right there hearing it, so I was like, "See, babe, you know, it's
Right. And that would have lasted. Like Joni
better
is
hold
everything.
on to me." Yeah, better
Oh, yeah.
because Joni might come and
Yeah.
you know,
Joni's hot on your trail.
it was cool. It also, you know, was a confirmation that the time spent curating my wardrobe was useful.
Was worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And my wife played a big role in that.
Well, man, I mean, I'm so like happy that we were able to talk about, I think, what is a really unique experience. You know, I think once you're in the music industry for a while, working at a certain level, Grammy is something that's kind of just like talked about, and you can kind of get used to it, you know. And I know we mentioned a lot of like the realities of what can go into getting to this place, but I do think personally, I think it's really special that you've gotten to this point in your career, and also having known you for so long and met you way back in New York, you know, and kind of seeing all these iterations happening in real time. I think it's something to be proud of. I'm proud of you. I think it's awesome. And what do you hope for your future creatively?
You know, I want to keep working with amazing artists. I've been getting some film scoring opportunities lately, and I'm interested in exploring that world. I know it's like I'd be kind of starting over, and it's a different way of doing things, but it's a growth area because there's so much content now, as opposed to like the record getting songs on artists' albums is not a growth area now because of like streaming royalties. So I'm trying to just stay adapting. I have been doing the original songs for a BET show this year, Sacrifice, which I'm really excited about. And there's been some great artists, like known artists that are doing cameos in the show and doing songs with them. So I'm explore that. Just try to keep growing. You know, I don't feel like I've peaked in any way, and I feel like I'm still, you know, connecting with different people. And so I just want to keep that going. And we're expecting a child in a month and a half.
Yeah, you are about to be a papa.
Definitely. So I want to create a positive environment for our son to be. And I think just like stay healthy, stay working. And, you know, sometimes I get despondent. I'm nowhere, nothing's happening. You know, I have these periods of time where I really feel that, but I know it's like it's just like a mental thing, and I get out of those things. So just to keep working on my mentality, staying in the positive and like laid back element of it, as opposed to getting stuck on those ruts. I've learned that they're temporary through therapy and stuff. So anyway, I'd like to work on stuff that makes a big impact, culturally, commercially, but also continue to develop independent artists. And if I choose to release my instrumental stuff, I hope that gains some traction. And I don't really think I want to be super active touring, but it would be cool to do some stuff in that realm. So I'm just going to keep my fires going, and I'm constantly retooling my focus, chiseling. Oh, should I focus more on this, on that? Staying, you know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Survive and advance. You know, and my all-time favorite quote about the music business, which wasn't made about the music business, but it applies, is "This is the business we've chosen." From Godfather 2. So you just have to accept that there's just going to be, it's going to be funky. It's often not fair, but if you get to create music every day, which I do, that just in itself is a win and just like a blessing. Like, it's a good way to spend a life.
I hope you guys enjoyed all of the nuggets of wisdom Sam had to drop about mindset in the music industry. I think my biggest takeaway is the age-old adage of winning isn't everything. But it sure is pretty damn awesome sometimes, so especially when it's a Grammy. If you're in LA on a Tuesday night and want to see some music, you can go see Sam at his Tuesday night residency at Shoo Shoo Baby once he's back from paternity leave. But you can find out when that is by following him over on Instagram at Sam Barsh. If you want to hang out with me on Instagram, you can do that at Danny Official, DAANI Official. And you can also follow the podcast on TikTok at FTFE Pod. First time for everything pod. If you enjoyed this or any episode of the show, please tell a friend and rate us, and for extra points, give us a review because it helps new listeners find the show. First Time for Everything is produced by Two Sheilas Productions, and our theme song Closer is sung by me, written by me and my friends in the Royal Foundry, and produced by the Royal Foundry. Thank you guys so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late for your first time.